The Boise State Broncos are back to being one of the more beloved teams in college football. It's a group of five team that was really fun to watch back in the day. And now I think they're getting back to that. Spencer Danielson has done a great job, brought them to a 12-2 season, the college football playoff. And now he has to look at what life is like without one of his star players. We take a deep dive into the Boise State Broncos to see what we should expect from this team in 2025. Now, the 12-2 season was phenomenal. You look at this team and what they were able to accomplish, it was so much fun. Now, a lot of that had to do with Ashton Genty, but overall, this was a really good football team. You had a defense that played well and it was opportunistic, and you had an offense that, yes, Ashton Genty deserves lots of the attention, but at the same time, Dirk Cutter was a big reason why they had success. He was very dialed in to what his personnel had and what they were good at. And he drew up a number of big plays. It's why they were an explosive offense. And now you're going to have to figure out what to do without both him and Ashton Genty. But the returning talent makes it so that you don't have a ton of regression. The rushing attack should still be just fine. It maybe just doesn't have the ceiling. And when you look at the roster changes for this team, Ashton Genty and Ahmad Hassanin are the two biggest losses for this team. I think when you look at who's one guy on offense and defense that will be missed, those two are two of the easier ones to say for really any team in college football. That's how impactful they were when they were with the Broncos, and that's how exciting they were. Both had phenomenal impacts on this team, and they are going to be missed. Now, the nice thing for Boise State, especially in an era where group of five teams are losing players left and right, this is a team that overall did not have to do a ton of patching up on the roster. They didn't have to bring in a ton of transfers because they had guys in place. And, it wasn't like teams weren't trying. We heard Spencer Danielson talking about how teams were trying to poach some of his players, and they have done a good job of keeping these guys at their school. And when you look at the talent that they bring in as well, it speaks to the quality that they're able to command, but also it talks about the roster retention and how well they are able to keep some of their players. So that is going to be really fun to watch for the long term in this new era of college football. How does Boise State continue keeping its roster intact, and how do they keep their top players? Because there are plenty of players that could have gone elsewhere. We'll dive into a lot of them. But there are players that could have gone elsewhere. They could have gone to Power Four schools. They could have gone to a new program. And they decided to come back to Boise State to run it back. And we'll start with the offense. The offense is going to be a little bit different than it was last year. Maddox Madsen is going to have a lot of pressure on his shoulders. And he did last year. I think a lot of people forget because Ashton Genty was so good that Maddox Madsen had to make a lot of big time throws. And Dirk Cutter definitely gave him opportunities to do that. This is a guy who threw for over 3,000 yards and 23 touchdowns. And he was a relatively new face. Not a lot of people knew who he was. And he had to help this team in many ways. This year, he might have to do more of that work. He might actually have to produce more for this offense. Ashton Genty is gone. And even though this rushing attack should still be in good hands, you don't have that player that's going to be able to break off runs like Ashton Genty did. You have guys that can make explosive plays, but Ashton Genty was on another level, and he was a special kind of player that you don't see it all the time, especially not at Boise State. So the passing attack might have to be more of a factor. It might have to be better than 70th in the entire country. That is something that is going to have to change. And now that Maddox Madsen has that experience, you feel pretty confident that he should be able to make some of those throws. It'll just come down to the guys catching the balls. Behind him, you have relative inexperience. Max Cutforth and Caleb Annett are two guys that will be competing for that backup spot, and it'll be fun to see how Madsen can actually compete this year and then what happens for the foreseeable future. That is something to keep an eye on, and this is a big year. Making the college football playoff reset expectations. And this is a Boise State team, I think, before Danielson fully took over, that was the fan base was kind of uncertain where things were going. And you bring in Danielson to, or you keep Danielson rather, to keep things going, to get back to that successful era. And you started off really strong. Madsen is going to play a role in continuing that, but also the rushing attack is still going to have to be good. Now, it may not, again, be as good as we thought, but it's a group that's really talented. And the big question right now is Gain's health. What is he able to do this season? What is his status going into the year? He's put in a ton of work in the offseason, and he is someone who has the ability to make big plays. Only had 20 carries last year, but averaged 7.8 yards per carry. When you watched Boise State last year, you saw some of his capabilities on a frequent basis. So you know that he's capable of making those plays. You know that he has the ability. It just comes down to, what does this latest development mean for this team? That's also why you bring in a guy like Malik Sherrod from Fresno State. Not the most impressive numbers last year, but if you look at 2 years ago, that's a guy who is a big time playmaker, and he'll be fun to watch in this offense as well. You also have John Rice Dubar, you have Dylan Riley. There is good depth. There's plenty of competition at the running back position, and you feel fairly confident that they'll find the replacement for Genty with multiple guys running the show. You feel confident that this rushing attack should be able to continue doing things, being really efficient. And when you look at what Nate Potter has to work with, you feel confident about what they have up front as well to help those guys make those kinds of plays. But the rushing attack will be kind of a question right now, just because we don't know who that guy is going to be. It's not necessarily a matter of, is this going to be a good rushing attack? Boise State is still going to run the football. They are going to be physical. They are going to get downhill. And it's just a matter of who they hand the ball off to. That's not going to be a question. But right now, we just don't know who that guy is going to be. If Gaines is healthy, I really like what he can do. Malik Sherrod is a great piece to have as well. And Dubar and Riley are nice depth pieces that will be pushing for time and touches as well. We talked about the passing attack and how Maddox Madsen needs to be more of a factor in 2025, and the wide receivers have some work to do as well. You know, Cam Camper is not going to be here anymore. Prince Strong is going to be gone as well. So you have really two openings for a wide receiver position that does return Latrell Caples. I'm honestly, in this era of college football, I'm not surprised when guys are able to come back. I thought Caples was going to be gone for sure, but he is back. 38 catches for 473 yards and 5 touchdowns. I think his production will increase this year, and he's going to need some help. So maybe a guy like Chris Marshall, a guy who came into the college ranks with a ton of hype, things just haven't worked out for him. He's able to realize his potential and find that consistency. I really like what this Boise State offense can do, and I really think that Maddox Madsen can have an even bigger year if someone like Chris Marshall gets things going. You also have Chase Penry and Cameron Bates, Ben Ford. Those are guys who don't have a ton of production, but they do have some. You're just waiting for somebody to step up and fill one of those roles. But Caples, being that reliable player, gives you a sense of peace and stability, especially for a quarterback that might have to take a step in his development, take a step in his production, and be more of a leader for this offense. The other thing that's really nice is you return quality tight ends. Matt Wagner and Matt Lauder are back. And when we talk about players that could have gone elsewhere, Matt Lauder is someone who could have gone really anywhere. If you're talking about tight ends that had a lot of opportunities, I would bet that Matt Lauder had plenty of schools that wanted him to come to their program. He also could have probably gone pro. He's a first-team All-Mountain West player, 47 catches for 619 yards and 7 touchdowns. He was a massive part of this offense. Everything obviously goes to Ashton Genty. The spotlight goes there. But when you go to the passing attack, Matt Lauder was the one making big plays when they needed it the most. And again, he could have gone pretty much anywhere he wanted to, and he decided to come back to Boise State. That speaks to the culture of this program. That speaks to the coaching staff, the roster, and Matt Lauder is going to be fun. Once again, I think he'll be even a bigger part of this offense as well if the wide receiver position doesn't get sorted out right away. Now, Wagner only had 10 catches last year, but he's a young player that is going to be more of a part of this offense. And then when you look at the depth at the tight end position, you don't have a ton of proven commodities right now, but right now you feel pretty good about your top 2 options. So the passing attack, honestly, should be just fine. This is a group that doesn't have a ton of concerns. This is a group that doesn't have a ton of weaknesses. And that's a really exciting thing if you're Boise State trying to make a run once again at the Mountain West title and getting back into the college football playoff. Now, one thing that you're going to have is an offensive line that can handle the season, the physicality of the season, the difficulty, especially of the schedule that you have. And I think they have a really good group. Now, injuries did play a role in getting some of these guys in and out of the lineup, but that also means you saw plenty of guys get experience. You do have some stability. Your tackles come back in Cage Casey and Hall Schmidt. They combined for 26 starts last year. So you feel confident that Madsen will have time to throw because the edge will be protected. You also have guys with less than double-digit starts in Tyler Keeneth, Mason Randolph, and Roger Carrion. Those guys all have good starts from last year and have a lot of starts under their belt in their careers. If they can stay on the field, you feel confident about what this Boise State team can do. You feel really good about the rushing attack, even with the uncertainty of who's RB1. You also have good depth behind them. Jason Steele, Zach Holmes, and Jake Steele all have plenty of experience. Jason Steele and Zach Holmes have 11 combined starts from last year coming back. The center position is really intriguing to see how that plays out, but that means you have good depth. You have good competition. You also brought in Miles Walker from Ohio State. That's an intriguing player to watch at the tackle position to give you some of that depth. So overall, this offense is in good hands. The offense does have a lot of exciting pieces. The offensive line is probably the most important part, and they have the right pieces coming back to be physical, to ensure that this rushing attack can be as physical and as effective as it was with Ashton Genty. You're just going to have somebody else running the ball. It's also going to ensure that your quarterback has the time to throw, has the ability to make plays, and will allow your team to put points on the scoreboard. And this is a Mountain West Conference that I think is getting tougher and tougher because of the teams that are making improvements. So winning the conference isn't as easy as it used to be. And not that it was ever really easy. UNLV is going to be a problem once again. So your offense needs to be able to put up points against some of these offenses. And we'll dive into the schedule here in a little bit. The defense is really fun. It's not going to be the most elite defense. It's not going to be a defense that absolutely shuts down other teams. But if there's one thing I've learned about Eric Shenander is that he understands the personality of his defense. He understands what they're going to be successful at. And one of those things is creating turnovers. Now, again, they're not going to be elite by any means. They are not going to be a top team when it comes to turnovers, but they are going to be elite at creating turnovers at opportune times. And you saw it when he was at UCF. You're seeing it again at Boise State. You saw it last year. It felt like when Boise State needed a big play, they needed a turnover, this defense stepped up and delivered. Now, again, you're going to have to find who is going to be that guy that steps up to replace Ahmed Hasnain. You can make an argument that he was equally as important to the defense as Ashton Genty was to the offense. Now, the nice thing is that you do return 3 players in the starting 4 that will make you feel confident about their ability to replace him. Max Stieg had 14 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks. Braxton Felia had 24 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks. Second team all Mountain West. And then there's Jaden Virgin Morgan. 40 tackles, 16 tackles for loss, 10 sacks. A first team all Mountain West selection. So you feel really good about what this group can do without Hasnain. Now, you obviously want to see him back, but obviously everybody has to move on. That being said, this defensive line, I do not expect a big drop back. If anything, you might see a little bit of a step back. You might see them struggle a little bit, but I don't foresee that being a big problem. You bring in David Latu from BYU to be part of that as well. A guy like Malachi Williams could be part of that, coming in from Idaho on the edge positions. 35 tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks. You also bring in Deion Washington on the interior from Hawaii. 19 tackles for him, 5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. Outside of that, you have some guys that are looking to step up and be more a part of this rotation, prove their worth, if you will. You have a number of guys coming in via the transfer portal that are going to be intriguing players. You have 2 Arizona transfers coming in. And that'll be fun to watch. Again, you did not need a ton of transfer portal talent because you feel confident, or at least the coaching staff feels confident about their ability to keep this roster intact and trust that the recruiting efforts are doing the job. You don't need to bring in a ton of transfers because you have the right players already on the roster. So you feel good about where this group is at. Now, that's also going to help the linebackers as well. And the linebackers do lose some of those players that were able to make key plays time and time again. Now, you do usher in a new player that is going to have to replace Andrew Simpson and Jake Ripp. So that's going to be a new challenge for him. There are opportunities for him to make plays because the defensive line will give him a lot cleaner looks than most linebackers, I think, in college football, but also because of the partner he has coming back. You have Marco Notarini coming back after a big year. First team All Mountain West selection with 60 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, and 2 fumble recoveries. The starting lineup for this group of linebackers, the starting tandem, if you will, is in good hands. I also really like the talent behind them. Chase Martin could step into a bigger role, could be a big part of this rotation. Clay Martineau also 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack. You have production. Even if it's small, you do have a small sample size, but at the same time, this is a program that's done a pretty good job at the linebacker position. And again, with the defensive line being what it is, you feel pretty confident about this group's ability to make plays. That's also going to help the secondary. Now, the secondary does lose a couple of pieces. Alex Tubner is gone. Seyi Oladipo is also departing. Markel Reed. You lost, I think, some players that will definitely be tough, but overall, I think you have the right pieces coming back that you don't feel too upset about those guys leaving. Amarian McCoy got tested quite a bit last year, and you saw him make plays. 60 tackles, 14 passes defended, 1 interception. Opposite of him, Jeremiah Irby, the former Cal transfer, 34 tackles, 7 passes defended, 1 interception. So those are 2 guys that got a ton of experience last year. They played on the biggest stage. They know what it takes to win. You also have a good tandem at safety with Zion Washington and Ty Benefield. Ty Benefield is a honorable mention, All Mountain West selection last year, 82 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions, 2 fumble recoveries. We talk about turnovers. This group understands how to get turnovers. They understand what this defense needs. And this is a secondary that honestly will probably continue the success that they had last year. It's just going to come down to, are you able to slow teams down a little bit more? They finished 107th, but I don't think that number speaks to what this group is capable of doing. Devon Banks is coming back as well. 35 tackles for him, 6 tackles for loss, 3 passes defended, 1 interception at the nickel position. You bring in Jaden Mickey behind him from Notre Dame. You also bring in a couple other transfers in Demetrius Freeney from Arizona and Derek Ganter Jr. from Eastern Washington. That's a different level of experience coming from Eastern Washington to here. Same thing with Jalen Webb coming from Kilgore Junior College. You have guys that are looking to be part of this rotation. The starters appear to be solidified, but with last year's performance, you know that there's going to be competition. Shenander is not going to accept what happened last year as, oh, well, we made it to the playoff, we're good. No, we're going to keep giving guys opportunities to grow, and we're going to keep pushing our starters to be even better than they were in 2024. And that's going to help a team win football games. And they do have some challenges for sure. You start the year with a road trip to USF. Now, that is going to be an intriguing game for sure. Those are 2 very different programs in terms of style of play. Boise State still feels like they're in good hands. Yes, you do have to rediscover that rushing attack, but this is a team overall that's a little bit more put together than USF. USF also has a gauntlet of the first 3 games, so maybe that's going to put some stress on them. That is a good way to get your team focused and locked in for the year, is going on a road trip to a team that is trying to win its conference. You also then host Eastern Washington after that, so you don't have to worry about another big game, and then you get a bye week. Then after that, you go to play Air Force. Now, Air Force should be a better team this year, and I trust that Troy Calhoun has everybody on board with making those improvements. But this is a Boise State team that shouldn't have too many issues with winning that football game. If they play sound football, they play disciplined football, you feel pretty good about what they could do in that game. You then also host App State. App State is looking to bounce back. You then go to Notre Dame. That's a playoff team. That's going to give us a good idea of where Boise State stands in terms of their abilities to compete with the best of the best. Notre Dame is going to be a playoff team this year. They are super exciting. Marcus Freeman brought them all the way to the national championship, and playing them is good for this team early in the season. After that, you get New Mexico at home. That's not the same team that it once was, but it might still be tough. Then you get UNLV at home. And we saw the games against UNLV last year, and now Dan Mullen is running a completely new roster. That one is going to be a challenging game. We're definitely going to know what UNLV is at that point. Then you go to Nevada. That's a team that played really tough last year. They played teams tough, and they were able to, even though their record wasn't impressive, I think they'll be better. That one could be tricky as well. Fresno State's going through a transition with a new coaching staff. That's a game after that you get at home. Then you get a bye week before you go at San Diego State, Colorado State at home, and at Utah State. So the road schedule is kind of hit or miss. The Notre Dame game and the USF game are challenging. Utah State and San Diego State could be slight difficult games as well. Don't really know there. Right now, I see this team as, if you look at the ceiling, 11-1. I don't think they're beating Notre Dame, but I do think they can win the rest of their games. I do think they can go 11-1. The over-under is at 9.5. So obviously, Vegas thinks that they could win 10, 11 games. I don't see this team going below 9-3. There's too much returning talent. There's too many returning starters for that to happen. Now, if injuries play a role at key positions, then maybe, but overall, I feel confident in this team. And for the most part, the channel agrees. 77% say first through third, 15% say 4 through 6, and somehow 8% of you think 10 through 12. That would be real rough. That would be a real eye-opener, and it'll be tough to see that happening, but college football has done weirder things. That being said, I do think that Boise State is going to have another solid year. Even without their star players, they feel like they're in a good position. They should have the returning talent to make another run at the playoff, and it's just going to come down to a few games. If you're able to show that you're competitive against Notre Dame, you feel pretty good about your chances in the rest of them. That being said, there are plenty of tests for this team, and they'll have to take it week by week in 2025, but you feel confident that this team got the experience it needed last year, and even without some of its star players, you feel confident about their ability to have success this year.